Yep. I'm sorry, Teresa. I moved you to the wrong spot. It always happens.
Well, welcome to Spirit Sessions, a view of the lights where we move around whenever we want to. It's okay. Here's a little smudge for everybody. Come on in, leave your day behind, and come on and enjoy us for a little minute here. Like and subscribe and share this out because on today's adventure, we're going to be talking about the Wendigo. Now, what do you know about Wendigo? What have you heard? Do you believe it? Does it make your skin go ooh like that? What is it? And we are going to find out today. But first of all, Rhonda, I forgot to ask you if you had a card ready for the day. If you don't, we'll just jump into it because I forgot to.
I do have a card today.
Woohoo!
Just give me 1 second and I'll just pull one out here. Who should I get, Teresa? I've got so many. Oh, because we're going to do the Wendigo, I'm going to pull out one of my mushroom spirit cards. Because we're going deep in the woods. Jason is from BC and he's always in the deep rainforest and in the forest hunting down all sorts of things. And so I'm going to pull a card and it's Cordyceps today, Essence. So that's the one today. These are help your brain think. So I could use a lot of these today, this week, with the changes that are going on here. And so the Cordyceps and the meaning for you today, when I get into the Cordyceps, is what do you need to excel at? Do you need help from someone or something? Do you need that extra push to help you grow? It might be time to take what you need to give you the strength and stamina to get where you need to be. Are you looking after yourself? Are you replacing the stores that you use? Or are you burning yourself out? It's time to look inwards and ask yourself, what do I need? Do I need to be a bit selfish and put all my time and energy into me? There are a lot of questions here. So, Cordyceps are a really good mental mushroom. I suggest everyone take their daily dose and hot chocolate or coffee. There's lots of mushroom coffee and there's lots of mushroom hot chocolate out there that include them. So they're really good for our brain health. So there you go. I would love to introduce our guest, Jason Hewlett. I always say I sometimes poach Jim Harold's guests, but I heard him on Jim Harold. But the Wendigo has been sort of in the back of our lore, being in Ontario and with lots of Anishinaabe people here. You hear about the Wendigo, but we also read a lot. I read a lot of Aboriginal artists, authors here, and Joseph Boyden. I've read a few of his books, but the first one where it was really introduced was in 3 Day Road, and that was a really spectacular kind of introduction to the Wendigo, and you're still left thinking, what is it? So I'm hoping, Jason, you can introduce yourself because you've got talent galore and going forward, you've been in everything. Plus you do the paranormal, you do the Sasquatch research, and now you're doing the Wendigo research. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up doing this for a living.
That's really interesting question to try and answer. I've like anyone that does this, I've always been interested in it since I was a kid. And growing up here in British Columbia, of course, I'm in the interior, so it's Sasquatch country. So I grew up with the Sasquatch story. And Harrison Hot Springs is like 2.5 hour drive. And of course, that's basically where the whole term Sasquatch originated. Wow. And, there's just lots of different stories in British Columbia. The Ogopogo is right next door in Kelowna. So I just grew up with all these stories around me and then had experiences that I couldn't explain, which just kind of piqued my interest in the supernatural in general. But I never really did much with it other than read about it or watch television programming on it until like 20 odd years ago when I had to write. I was in journalism school because I was a journalist for 10 years, investigative journalist. And I took a magazine writing class and we had a whole semester to write one article. Which is unheard of because when I was a newspaper reporter, I wrote 8 stories a day kind of thing, but you had 3 months to write one article. So I decided to write an article for the Fortean Times, which was the big paranormal magazine at the time. And where I live, there's a place called Tronquil Sanitarium. It was an old mental institution and tuberculosis hospital that shut in the 80s when it was decommissioned. And as soon as it shut, all the urban legends started about it being haunted. And so I knew the caretaker at the time, and he agreed to let me go in overnight. And so I found like someone who said they were psychic, and I found someone who said they had experiences out there. And I had a friend of mine who was skeptical, and then another person I knew who was in television who could bring all the audio video equipment. And I spent the whole night at Tronquil just investigating to write this article. And that kind of gave me the bug to do it. And I did it like part-time just for fun for quite a while. But it's amazing how things have changed, because like I was a journalist from 2003 to 2014. And had I openly talked about my interest in the paranormal, I'd have had zero credibility as a reporter, because that's all you have is your credibility. So I didn't really talk about it, and it even fell on the wayside until 2017, when I was up with my son one morning. He was watching cartoons, and I was just surfing the internet, and I found a page called Vancouver Paranormal Society, which at the time was run by Pete Wren, and they were looking for new members. So on a whim, I just put my name in the hat. And then Pete called me up, and I went on an investigation, and he and I became close friends, and eventually we formed our own team, the Canadian Paranormal Society. And we're in the interior of British Columbia, and we do everything from hauntings to UFO sightings to Sasquatch. And somehow through all that, we ended up doing content for YouTubes and writing a book. And it kind of led me here, where I'm working on 2 projects for small town monsters out of the United States, which I think make the best documentaries of their kind. I did one for them last year called Cursed Waters, which was about Ogopogo, and wrote a book called The Legend of Ogopogo that accompanied it. And now this fall, I'm directing a Wendigo documentary that I made, and writing a book about the Wendigo called Heart of Ice, Tracking the Wendigo. And just because I've always been interested in Wendigo, you know,
because it's like one step beyond kind of different, right?
It is. It's thought of as a cryptid now. I just think because it's an easy thing to designate, but it's not traditionally what we call a cryptid. A cryptid is just an unidentified, what we believe is an unidentified animal that is just out mysteriously around. But the Wendigo started as an indigenous folk story. But what was odd about it is that it's a folk story that also crossed over into Canadian history and Canadian law, because of a few very public cases where a gentleman called Swift Runner ate his entire family and then was arrested by the Northwest Mounted Police. And he was the first person hung in Western Canada at Fort Saskatchewan. And he said he killed and ate his family because a Wendigo took him over and made him do it.
And it's important to note that at least in the Native culture in this area, and probably in your culture, that's a big no. Cannibalism is never really. The white settlers came and thought thought the natives all ate people, but really it was the white people that ate themselves, like ate each other more than starvation. Then that was never looked upon kindly. A real big no, right, in the Native culture.
Yeah, there'd be certain periods of intense cold where there was a lack of food, where you heard about cases of cannibalism, but they would always attribute it back to a Wendigo as a means to explain it. And the Wendigo was never actually given physical form until Algernon Blackwood's book came out. I believe it was like in the 1920s, called Wendigo, where it was actually then described as an emaciated person, not with the antlers. That again came later as the story continued to evolve. So yeah, it's this thing that's just morphed through time and history into something now where people believe they're hearing and seeing these 10, 12 foot tall skeletal creatures with horns on their heads whistling in the woods to try to lure you out. And it's almost a case of chicken and the egg, like what sort of came first. It's become popular now because of the TV show Supernatural featured a Wendigo. There's been movies like Antlers that feature a Wendigo, and video games like Until Dawn that have brought the Wendigo kind of into modern pop culture. So I think people are now believing they're seeing Wendigos in the woods because of things they're seeing in popular culture. Things they're seeing or think they're seeing seem to fit what TV and video games is telling them is a Wendigo. So I think it's fascinating. And it's a hard thing to research and put your finger on, to just go. People say, well, what is it? And you just kind of like, I couldn't tell you exactly what a Wendigo is. It sounds like it's a lot of things, and a lot of it comes down to what you believe it is.
So what is your favorite? I imagine you collected a lot of different stories over. Now, where do are they across North America, or what's the habitat of the Wendigo typically?
It technically exists sort of up in northern Alberta is where it started. That's sort of like with the Cree and Algonquin people. But the stories have kind of now spread all the way down into like Eastern Canada, like where you are, and then down into like the United States as well on the East Coast. People seem to confuse the Skinwalker stories from kind of like the Uinta Basin as being Wendigo. It's not. The Skinwalkers and Wendigos are very different things.
Oh, okay.
A lot of the stories that are featured in the book and in the documentary come obviously from northern Alberta. I did travel up to northern Alberta last year and connected with a paranormal researcher, podcaster named Morgan Knudsen. And we went out and traveled to like the Tuatna Valley where Swift Runner killed his family, and at the Slave Lake where there's the Marie Cordarelli story. We went to a place where there was a sighting out of Edmonton called Mameo Beach, where Morgan and some other people had what they believe was a Wendigo experience or an encounter.
Wow.
And then talking with another investigator named Amanda Quill out of Vancouver, where her paranormal team, Cold Spotters, was called to a couple Wendigo-related cases right in the heart of, like, Surrey. So there, really? And then near where I live, there was a Wendigo sighting, and we did an on the grounds investigation, which becomes a big part of the wraparound in the documentary as well. So we sort of stuck here. But I interviewed Chad Lewis, who's a writer and researcher in the United States, and he talks a lot about Wendigo experiences that he has in his neck of the woods in the eastern United States as well. So it's a widespread story.
Now, tell me I'm wrong. The Wendigo begats Wendigos, right? It's sort of almost like the zombie werewolf experience. Like if you are attacked by a Wendigo, you may become a Wendigo. Is that?
Well, if you are possessed by the Wendigo and then consume human flesh, you become a Wendigo, and you are doomed to roam the woods technically forever. Like that's the thing. And until like basically they're continuously hungry, so they will even eat themselves. What I mean? Instead of hunger. And that's kind of in a sense where they'll come to a stop, or unless someone is actually able to kill one, which is extremely hard to do. You have to you have to dismember it. You have to melt the heart of ice that is formed there, and then you can split the body into various locations or bury it on consecrated ground. There was a gentleman that went by the name of Jack Fiddler, and he was an Indigenous elder, and that's kind of what he did. He killed people who were possessed by Wendigo in Eastern Canada, but then he was then arrested for murder, and him and his brother, and that became a big court case too. And so it's fascinating. But the people I even found today, like it sounds like something that's really even hard to believe in. Right? Like to me, it's this thing that seems so fantastical, but the people who believe in it, when I went up to northern Alberta, there's places there that belief in it is so strong that they don't want to talk about it because they fear even us talking about the Wendigo right now will bring a Wendigo to us. So it causes still a lot of panic and anxiety today, which I found most interesting, just because in our modern age to believe that this could happen, right? I mean, I've investigated paranormal for a long time now. You guys are obviously both believers. We are willing to accept this, but even the Wendigo itself seems just one step further and even just harder.
It just seems like, is it an extra dimensional creature that has slipped through and is in ours, or is it a manifestation of some mental health crisis? Like Hannibal Lecter. You know what I mean? Like you just can't really pigeonhole it anyway. It's very interesting, and it's like I said, the book, Joseph Boyden's book, The 3-Day Road, I know that the protagonist in that story thought he had become a Wendigo and wanted to be killed or was being possessed by a Wendigo because
Well, when Swift Runner was hung, he was hung because he was so scared of the Wendigo spirit. Like he was ready. You know what I mean? Like he hadn't believed he had been fully taken over yet, but it was still coming for him. And he wanted to be hung in the end because he was so scared of this thing.
Yeah. But did they kill him? That's the question, right?
Well, he was hung and he was buried, and his body's buried out near Fort Saskatchewan, the new Fort Saskatchewan, because they've built a new one adjacent to where the original fort was, before anything could happen. But it's a powerful story. There's actually an actual designation, Wendigo psychosis, that's used to explain these cannibalistic acts committed by people who believe they were being possessed by a Wendigo, but they attribute it to being mental health, strictly a mental health thing. But some of these cases, when you read into them, just still become so fantastical that people like Morgan Knudsen believe that it's too safe a bet just to call it a mental health thing, because there are supernatural components to it that have been documented. So it's what is it? So I attempt to cover all that off in the book and in the documentary.
So yeah, it's a big head scratcher, because you just can't figure it out whether it's one or the other, or maybe it's all of the things together. So people have actually said they've seen them in recent times. Is that right?
Yeah. People believe they have. Chad Lewis told me a story about a couple of brothers who had a summer camp, who each had separate experiences where they believed they saw something in the woods. And when they came together and talked about it, they saw the same thing. And then when they went to look it up online, the picture that they found online was what they believed they saw, and that the pictures were of a Wendigo.
So that'd be like in the trailer, I put a picture up there. I don't know, I can't give credit, but it's not my picture, but I found it on the web of a skeletal, like skinny, tall, big creature with the horns coming out of the head and skeleton.
That's the modern interpretation of it. Yeah, that's what they believe they saw. And the cases that Amanda Quill investigated, a gentleman saw something in a window of his house that looked like the same sort of thing.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which is interesting. So it begs the question then, do we then influence these things by what we see, right? Parapsychology would say yes, because if we believe that what we saw as a Wendigo, we're going to make it look in our minds of what a Wendigo now looks like. It covers off how, when it comes to UFOs, the original depictions were of like chariots of the gods, like literally chariots of the sky. And then in the Victorian times, people saw airships.
Right.
And now we're seeing these spacecraft, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
that we can't explain. So as time progresses, are we reinterpreting all these things and kind of making it different? There's so many directions you can go off in.
Because the eye only sees light. It's the brain that interprets, right? So
Exactly.
So how is the brain being influenced by our experiences, and how does it interpret that light coming into our eyes? So it's a safe bet that people who see Wendigos are not confusing them with Bigfoots if they have big horns coming out of their ears, unless Bigfoot's making fun.
Yeah. Which I don't think Bigfoot would really care. Right? Bigfoot just does Bigfoot stuff and looks like Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting, because I can't think of anything that exists that has those antlers and walks on two legs, right, like that. And there's also this large skeletal. Like if you see a deer in the woods, you're seeing a deer,
Even when they're on two legs,
they only stand. They don't. It's not like they get up and wander around like a Wendigo does. They're not on two legs for long. Like bears can go up on two legs and walk for a bit. And there's definitely people have misinterpreted a bear as a Wendigo, or probably even a bear with mange is a dog man. But a Wendigo, something that's 12 feet tall and a skeleton and antlers, you can't miss it. That's a pretty, there's nothing else that looks like that.
Yeah. Somebody's going out in the woods and dressing up like that. I can't imagine. And yeah, I guess there is kind of a taboo on talking about it, because they feel that might bring whatever inside. So when you were out have you seen one?
No, I have not. The closest was during our investigation. I don't want to give too much away, obviously, because of the book and the movie, but I did hear one thing that's attributed to Wendigo is a whistle.
Oh.
It'll whistle, and I heard a whistle like twice. I heard whistling.
Oh.
Could have been a loon. You know what I mean? But like when you're out, or some bird, but it's nighttime. And I know what I heard, and it was at a time when I was using a spirit box and asked some very pointed questions, Wendigo related questions. So I find it, and it was in a space where someone alleges they had a sighting. So maybe I did interview people who thought they saw one for sure. And that they're people that I trust their judgment. I have no reason not to believe them. And there's like 4 of them that witnessed it. 3 or 4 of them that witnessed it, and they all told the story the exact same way, which is rare even to find people who will do that. But as a journalist, that's something gives credibility to what people are seeing. One, there's more than one person, and all the people are explaining the exact same thing in the exact same order that the experience happened. So I found that gives their story credibility as well.
And does the Wendigo have red eyes? Is that something that I've seen or heard of?
That's something that's been depicted. There's, the descriptions vary, and it varies from indigenous culture to indigenous culture a bit too. Some say that there's like a light, or that there's like a wind, that a wind will announce the arrival of a Wendigo, kind of, you know what I mean, kind of thing, or that you'll see a tunnel of light before it shows up, or lights before it happens. So that's where, like, depending who tells you the story, like which indigenous culture is telling you the story, there's a variation on it. Much how with Sasquatch, there's differences, but there's still many similarities at the same time, right? They're definitely talking about the same thing.
Okay, so now that we've gotten into the Sasquatch, you've seen a Sasquatch, right? Or
I have not. I have had what I'd call Sasquatch adjacent encounters, kind of thing.
Like the knocking?
I've heard the knocking. I've heard the knocking. A colleague of mine, Olivier Aslan, and I were doing an investigation of a Sasquatch sighting, and we were doing the whoops, making the whoop, and we could have sworn something whooped back at us while we were doing that. We may have seen a print as well while doing an investigation. And then I've had stuff happen that are really, I would put a bit out there, but it's in areas where there's been Sasquatch stories. Like, for one, there's a lake just an hour east of us called Little Shuswap Lake, and it's just right next to Big Shuswap Lake, and that's all very much Sasquatch territory. And when I grew up, we had a family cabin there, and I would quite often, as I got older, stay by myself. And I remember it was like 1996. It was sort of early summer, maybe about this time. I'd rebuilt the deck on the cabin, and so I was tired, and I was going to stay one more night because I was tired. I didn't feel like driving back. And I've spent so much time out there alone. I've wandered all those woods. I've never had any reason to feel fear or panic. And it was literally like, I've done the dishes. I'm sitting down to have a drink and listen to some music and read a book. And it was sunset, and all the hair went up on the back of my neck. And I went from being completely calm to 100% terrified, to the point where I couldn't stay. Like, I could not stay there anymore. And so I'm pretty rational and pragmatic, but I packed everything up and I put it in the vehicle to go home. And the last thing I had to do was turn off the pump, because you don't want to leave the pump running when you're not there. And to do that, I had to go around the cabin and underneath it and shut off the pump, and then go all the way back around to the car. And that was probably the scariest 5 minutes of my entire life. And it took almost the entire hour drive back to town for that fear to leave me. 20 years later, same spot, we've completely rebuilt the cabin into more of like a house on a lake. Like, literally 20 years later, we're talking like, 2016, except now it's like late summer. Same thing. I'm out there by myself just for like a little vacation kind of thing. After a stressful period, I'm going to stay. It's the second night. I'm just going to leave in the morning. And literally the exact same thing happened. That same irrational fear kicked in. And I remembered the feeling, and I'm like, okay, just packed everything up and put it in the vehicle. And luckily the pump was inside, and it was a new pump, so you didn't have to turn it off. So I could just leave that alone, just locked up, got in the vehicle and drove home. And the same thing. It's like it took almost the full drive back for that fear to leave me. And I've heard Sasquatch will use like infrasound sometimes to just let people know they're there if they want you to leave, to do that for whatever reason. And I'm not going to mess with that sensation. I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything, but I don't scare very easily. And both of those was just like from like completely content to 100% terrified in like a matter of like, 10 seconds.
Yeah. That's incredible. That's incredible. Yeah. Shuswap Lake. I think my sister stayed on that one. They're out there, but being alone and having that feeling cougars and bears and grizzlies don't give you that feeling, right? They don't. I've been around, I've walked right by bears, and the bear just looks at you and you look at the bear. They'd come down and feed, like in the fall, we have a salmon run. So and the salmon would on the beach, and I could sit on the deck completely content. They'd come down and eat them, and they knew I was there and I knew they were there, and we didn't bother anybody. No,
But
they were
that
there.
was something else entirely, like
Go. It's got to be something that they're sending out. It's got to be an infrasound where it just makes you panic.
Yeah.
I think there's technology that they use in the military like that. But
they do. Yeah, they use that. It's like a fear frequency, they call it. And it's a certain megahertz rate that you can set to, which you can do that with almost anything, but there's nothing around. And the simple fact it's the same location where there's supposed to be Sasquatch.
yeah.
And I'm by myself. Like it's just kind of, they
Yeah,
just
start
walk
leaving
around.
out peanut butter and banana sandwiches. Apparently they like that, according
I've
to
heard that. I've left jars of peanut butter out for them and nothing's happened, but it was still like, yeah, they seem to like that. Or you leave them like, bits of tobacco or meat, or even depending on the culture, you could even leave like a rock that means something to you for them, just to guarantee safe passage.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the glyphs that they leave back?
I've come across weird, like in the woods, weird symbols and stuff like that I just couldn't explain. So that could have been the glyphs. I had an experience, a friend of mine and I had an experience. I don't think it was Sasquatch. A friend of mine named Chris Bose, who's an Indigenous artist and storyteller, told me it was an encounter with the little people that, will kind of go out and like scouts for Sasquatch. And we were 13. It was at the Shuswap again too. But not at the cabin. It was further up. But there's always this trail we would take into the woods, and being free range children, my parents, as long as you're back for like, dinner and nightfall and bedtime, just have at her. We'd been out all day and we'd come down and we passed, there's always this stand of like pine trees. We passed that, went and had dinner, did the dishes, wanted to go out for a final hike. And as we're going up, we're passing those pine trees. Only now all the pine needles that were on the ground are completely gone.
Ooh.
And there's this fire pit, like a little fire pit about like this. And then a little lean-to built into the ground, and inside the lean-to is a bone. Wow. And it was getting dark, and it just was the most bizarre thing. Because I mean, literally an hour earlier, there's none of that was there, and the ground was completely littered with pine needles. So we're like, let's get out of here. And couldn't stop talking about it all night. So literally the next morning, even before breakfast, we got dressed and we went back up there, and all that was gone, and the ground was completely blanketed with pine needles again.
Wow.
Oh. It's like you stepped through a door almost into somewhere.
It's what it felt like. So when people talk about, I'm someone, I don't like to explain an unknown with another unknown, but when I have that experience, makes me think that stuff like Sasquatch and Wendigo has got to have very much a spiritual component to it.
Yeah.
And the idea of them being dimension walkers doesn't seem completely far-fetched to me anymore.
No, I definitely think that the Sasquatch just walk through dimensions in and out, and that's explains a lot of the comings and going. They brought even coming out of trees, like just shape shifting into trees and then coming back or whatever. So I have no doubt that they do exist for however, and if they're a type of intelligent humanoid that's different path than we took and went off a different way.
Yeah, I can believe that too. Like, especially if you hang out around the Harrison Hot Springs area, it being a flesh and blood creature that's really good at hiding in the woods it seems perfectly logical and not far-fetched at all, because the forest down there is even different from where I am, is so dense. Like you step off a road 10 feet and you're gone, and you can be completely lost. And so for a creature to exist and be like, 5 feet from you while you're camping, and you're in their territory, and they are so adept at surviving in it. That makes perfect sense that it could be just an unidentified creature. But then the spiritual thing, you see those pictures of tracks in the snow that disappear halfway through a completely empty field. Or I've known someone who had a FLIR camera and it saw something and it just dematerialized right in front of them and went away. So I can believe both camps on that one.
Yeah, and I think it's probably is both camps. I think they just, they just have doors that they walk through that we can't see. I always go back to the Northern Lights when we've had some spectacular views in the past year or so. And one night I'm looking up at the sky and I'm thinking, yeah, we can see it. We can see it. Not really. And I'm talking to my husband. He says, there's nothing there. And I said, so I took a picture with my iPhone, it has 3-second exposure. And there they are, right? And beautiful. And he goes, but you can't see them. I said, but they're there. So no matter what, just a different way of seeing, even looking through the lens of the iPhone, you have a better idea of seeing them. It just makes the light change a little bit. And then we had some spectacular views, and the super taking the pictures of the Northern Lights when they were just amazing, spectacular. You've never seen them. You could see them with they got so brilliant that you could see them with your naked eye, but you could see them so much better through the lens of the camera. And it was. So I'm thinking, how much don't we see as humans? How much don't we see?
I think we miss a lot. I think the animals we have can see way better than we can, and know when stuff's around. Like as someone who's been investigating, hauntings for so long, like I'm sure there's stuff around us all the time. And
oh yeah.
It just isn't making contact with us because probably most of the time they don't want to bother. You know what I mean? Like,
and we would freak out anyways if we saw half of. There are people that can see, and they can see with their physical eyes when they're just on a different frequency. But
yep.
So here's another question I had for you.
Okay.
The Sasquatch, the UFOs, the Wendigos, do you think they're all related? Like, is it the people that are able to see, that can see them all, like, or open to seeing them, like you, have more experiences because you're open to the experience, and maybe you have set your senses a little different physically to pick up on those? Or do you think they're three different things entirely?
No, I think it's all the same thing. I think there's a writer named Colin Wilson who wrote a book called The Occult. And when he was a science fiction writer, and he was commissioned to write this book, and he wrote it because he didn't believe in any of it. And by the time he'd finished researching and writing the book, and it's a hefty book. It's like, 500, 800 pages. He was a believer, and he called it Faculty X. And he said it's something that's been with us since the dawn of time. And before people became so civilized and lived in these huge organized groups, they were very much in tune with the paranormal because they needed to in order to survive. Like when you're hunting like mountain lion on the plains, you don't want to get eaten. You learn to trust your gut instinct, or when something sends you a message or points you in a certain direction. And it's only as we became more industrialized and lived in, urban centers with lights and all this technology that we've stopped tuning into it. So I think there are people who are open to it, who have an experience, and that opens them to it. And once you've opened yourself up to it, you see it, all the different aspects of it more. And I think anyone can do that. But when a lot of people, because they're so caught up, and it's no offense to anyone who's a religious or like so reliant on science or anything like that, but who's very much dialed into that part of society, that when they have these experiences that, like, they see a ghost or a UFO or encounter a Sasquatch in the woods or whatever, it freaks them out so much that their view of reality is at risk of shattering. And so they just dismiss it and tell it that they didn't see it, or they just don't want to talk about it anymore. And they just go back to that existence that makes them feel safe. Because one thing, once you start having these experiences, your worldview changes, and it doesn't always feel like a safe place. I know as a crime reporter, I saw dead bodies. I watched a woman burned to death. I had all these experiences that show you, I think, how fragile life is. And I think having trauma also opens you up to seeing these things, because your worldview changes. So anything that can change your worldview, I think, allows you to experience the paranormal. And you just have to then be open to it and have these experiences and not let them freak you out. Because most of the time it's not anything to be scared of. It's more startling or surprising. And sometimes it's even very comforting to have these things happen. But it changes you. And I think it changes you for the better. Most people I know, some people are very traumatized by a Sasquatch encounter or something like that. But I think a lot of them, once they kind of reconcile it, the world is they see the world as a better place, because there's an assurance that there's more to life than this very materialistic, shallow existence that most of us are programmed into wanting to live through school and church and all these other things.
Yeah, there's so much more out there that we can't see, and that kind of gives you hope for all the stuff we can see that we don't want to see.
Yes, it does.
I remember a few stories that I've heard about people seeing UFOs, and I've experienced this on some level too. Is that it's like your brain, or there's some kind of dampening field that not everybody sees them, and then it's also like you forget the encounters unless you write them down. And somebody who writes down everything doesn't write down the encounters.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's like you program yourself to forget them, and then you have to sit back and really go into your mind and think all the ones you've seen over the years. And like people go, really, you've seen that many? Yeah, and I've had witnesses too with me, but other ones not. But you think like, and then it starts to become kind of mundane. Like, oh, my husband calls them your friends were here. He's even started to see them out here. And he says, your friends were out here. Well, I said, obviously they're your friends too, if you're seeing them. We
Exactly.
just get lights in the sky, but and they come in and show up, but which is interesting. But the connection between being open to that and being open to the paranormal and having experiences with spirits on the other side too, like several of them, like they've come in and touched you, you go, really? Like, that's kind of weird. But I just wonder, the more you see, the more you see. Is that what you're saying?
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, and there was a time when I stopped seeing, like I made a point of it because it was just, we'd moved into a house, we're having things happen. My wife and I wanted to have a family. And at the time she wasn't much of a believer and I didn't want anything to go on that would freak out my son. So I just stopped. Like stuff would happen, I'd ignore it, and eventually it all just went away. Until a period right before my adoptive mom died, and I started seeing them again, and I just related it to the fact that her time was coming, and so and my son was older, so I just allowed myself to start seeing again, and that's when I started having experiences. And very soon after that, joined Vancouver Paranormal Society. So I think you can turn it on and off. If you want. I mean, some people have a real hard time with it, and they just can't handle it. So they do turn it off. And we'll tell people when we're investigating their house, if they're having stuff going on, like, you are in control of this. Like, if you want the haunting to stop, you're the one that can do it. It's your house now.
Right.
And you just have to firmly tell them, no, if you want to be here, you can't cause these disturbances. But if you do, you have to leave. And it's up. You just are the one that can determine that. And it does.
Universal law. That's what
universal
we call
law, exactly. Universal law, right? And so I believe so. I mean, John Keel's kind of the first person to really talk about any of this being related to the Mothman Prophecies book, but I think he was bang on. He called them, I think, ultra terrestrials. And for whatever reason, there's this other element to our life on Earth that's interacting with us. We don't know why or the reasoning for it, but it's here, and it's been here as long as it's probably been here longer than we have.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the cave paintings.
Yeah. Yeah. And indigenous tribes talking about star people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And every culture on the planet having a wild man story, and lake monsters being seen all over everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, just it's all here, and it's been here longer than we have. And it's, you can say that you can be as skeptical as you want. And I think it's good to be skeptical, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still here.
Yeah. For sure. It's good. It's good to, like, I think the more you believe in this stuff, the more skeptical you become with every sighting you have. You have to prove to yourself that you're not seeing something that is natural or something that can be explained by something else. Like, you have to go through the checklist. Is that a plane? Is it is it this? Is it that? Whatever. And the same with everything else. Like, I'm hearing this noise. Is it the pump or is it something else?
Exactly. And I think there's people that are too willing to believe that every little, like, anyone that tells me they've had 8 Sasquatch sightings, I get pretty skeptical about, because there's people like John Green who have investigated for like decades and are great researchers and have never seen one. But you say you can go and commune with them in the woods. Like, I have a hard time with that. Like, your validity isn't so good. Your credibility is not good.
I feel for John Green, because I know that I've walked in Killarney Park, and I'm sure we followed the moose all the way around, but we never saw him. But
and it can happen. You know what I mean? Like I've said, I've had adjacent experiences, but I have yet to actually physically see one step out of the woods. But I think it's rarer to see them, more because they will let you know when they want to be seen. And the best chances of having a Sasquatch sighting isn't to go looking for one. It's to just go out and camp. It's the same. If you really want to see a ghost, turn all your equipment off and start packing it up. And that's generally when something's going to show up.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, they just those paranormal encounters, like, they just happen, right? And I think more and more people I just think they're more open to things now than they ever were because it's sort of more accepted now. So they can believe. We want to believe. My husband's little motto from the X-Files, he says, I don't want to believe and I don't want to see, is what he used to always say. He says, I can get on board with dragons and everything else, but leave the UFOs out, they creep them. So, but now it's just been too many times that he's been present when they show up. So, and I mean lights in the skies. I'm not talking like taking us away anywhere, at least not usual. But not that we know of.
Right. Oh, that's just good to add that caveat because who knows, right? Like,
yeah, who knows? But yeah, it's interesting. So you tell us how people can find you and what's your next thing. You have a podcast, you said, as well, mental health podcast. That's
a mental health podcast I do with a licensed counselor, grief and trauma counselor, and the podcast is called Into Greatness with Jason and Jolene, and it's just something I'm passionate about, mental health, and men's mental health, etc. And that's what she does. So we talk about issues from both like the everyman, the average person perspective, and then the counselor perspective, and we've been doing that for a while. And there's a website, intogreatness.com. But I like with the paranormal stuff, like I'm working on these 2 documentaries right now for Small Town Monsters, one of them being the Wendigo documentary with the book that's going to come out in October, and then a Bigfoot documentary that we just wrapped filming, and it comes out in December. So like those are both occupying a large portion of my time at the moment. It's been a lot of fun, and both of those will come out by Small Town Monsters. So if you
how can we find Small Town Monsters? Like,
they have a website, smalltownmonsters.com, and they have their own YouTube channel and a Facebook presence, and a lot of their films end up on like Amazon and Tubi and can be rented on like Apple TV and things like that. So I'm working on those for them, so they'll be out at both of those by the end of the year, and after that I'm not quite sure because that's so much focus just on these 2 things. There's a lot of work, and the Wendigo one started because I started researching the book first, and someone else was supposed to actually direct the documentary, and I just happened when I was doing my research to bring my camera along, and then circumstances were that just like a couple months ago, Seth Breedlove, who runs Small Town Monsters, is like, do you want to direct it? So I kind of directed it and made it in reverse, like sort of instead of going out and setting out to make this film, it's sort of I wrote the book and then I've sort of took footage I shot and then I've shot new sequences around it to make the documentary, and that's been a really interesting learning experience. And I'm so happy I work with a really good editor named Jason Morris. So once those are done, I'm not sure, but I'm sure I'll end up. I keep telling myself each book's the last book, and then I end up writing another one. So I'm sure I'll look into Cadborough.
There's got to be another book out there somewhere. Yeah.
I'm sure there is, and
there's
then
so
with that
many,
other documentary.
in Canada and in the US, cryptids. There are so many unknowns and everything.
Well,
else.
being in Canada, there's so many stories that we just don't talk about. Like in the States, they're very open to talking about all these things, but in Canada, for some reason, we're not. I don't know why. It's just not as culturally accepted here. Maybe more in Eastern Canada it is. Western Canada is really not into it. But yeah, there's so many stories to travel all over Canada, and just tell each of those stories could be like a book and a documentary on its own, or you could spend, so many. There's Lanso Meadows out in Newfoundland, where that's where the first Vikings landed in North America. And apparently if you go there, I think it's like in June, there's a day in June, if you show up, you can actually see the Viking ships coming in, like literally, like
seriously.
Yeah, people have reported seeing it and then hearing.
I gotta go to.
I gotta go there.
Next on my list now.
That would be awesome.
I have to go to Lanso. Find me out that date because I'll go and make sure I'm there for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking that'd be a gentleman named Ron Murphy and I, who's a researcher out of the States, both think that'd make a really good book and documentary as well. So maybe.
Well, Newfoundland would have a ton of stories. I'm sure they have those about that and their ghost ships and everything else, and their the native people that disappeared and where did they go? Yeah. So
there's
many
stories everywhere, and then there's anywhere like Montreal or Prince Edward Island, there's just tons, Cape Breton, everywhere. And even here in BC, we've got all up the coast, there's the Cadborosaurus, and Vancouver Island is supposed to have like a lot of Sasquatch encounters, etc.
Yeah,
So
I haven't
there's no
seen one
shortage.
there yet, but yeah, I'm waiting to see a Sasquatch on Vancouver Island. Yeah, I love that there. So Teresa, can you ask our guests your favorite question?
Well, we formerly called this the rock and roll question, but the truth is, it doesn't need a genre, whatever genre. So there you are. You're walking up on stage, and the audience is waiting for you, and they are excited. And there's your podium, but you need to focus, and you hear your song, and it's like, oh yeah, that's me. I'm going. What's your song?
It would be "Sign of the Southern Cross" by Black Sabbath.
Oh, right on.
Oh, you're right after Teresa's heart there.
Yeah, oh, that's my favorite band. I think last year on Spotify I was in the top 2% of Black Sabbath listeners worldwide or something like that. It surprised me, but I guess I listened to a lot of Black Sabbath last year.
I love that.
But that's my
awesome.
favorite song of theirs. Although I do prefer the Aussie era to the Dio one, but my favorite song is a Dio era Black Sabbath song. But I love that song.
Very cool.
That's right on. Rondo, are we skipping the rock question?
No, I want to know which one. What rocks he wears on. When he goes out on paranormal investigations.
Stone,
I have these
crystal.
2 bracelets that were made for me. One of them I just caught my eye and I bought it in the store. The other one was made by a listener of Into Greatness, and it has like black obsidian and a few of those other rocks on it, and it's all for protection. I have the list of what it's all on it. I don't have it in front of me, but I read it, and it's just all for grounding and spiritual protection and that kind of stuff. So when I go on an investigation, I tend to wear those, one because someone took the time to make it for me, which I thought was really sweet of them, and then just I think it's always just good to be safe. Like I'll do like a grounding meditation beforehand, and always when we wrap up an investigation, we thank the spirits, etc., for having us, but you're not welcome to follow us home, kind of thing, and just as a sign of respect. But I do wear that because I just think every little bit helps.
Yeah. Do you smudge after you're done too?
No, we don't. I have done smudging in places where there's been more negative things happen. I've done smudging. Typically, like our policy is we're not like exorcists. We're investigators. So we provide the information and then the homeowner can decide. And if they want us to do something, we will. And in this one case, it was decided it would be best we should just smudge, open all the doors, windows, and smudge, just because we had stuff that was just beyond anything I'd ever experienced happen. It was just odd.
Well, heavy energies get stuck in it, even if it's sadness, it gets stuck in the homes and it just lays there in the bricks and mortar, and smudging them helps clear it out.
It does. And before, when we were actually doing the Wendigo documentary, and when I was in Alberta going to that sighting, we did a smudge beforehand.
Yeah, I would
just to cleanse and clear the eyes and open the mind, kind of thing like that as well. And I'm not Indigenous, but I've found that I believe a lot of their policies are really good when it comes to such things like that.
Well, yeah, smudging has been used in very many cultures. It's not just Indigenous culture. I mean, in the Celtic culture and in other. I mean, the church uses it. They call it incense. Right?
Very true.
They call it incense, but
it's smudging.
They're smudging. They're smudging. Yeah, the smoke. And our last question, and you'll have to tell us the story behind it. Have you seen a UFO lately? And
I never really, like, I could safely say for most of my life, I never had any kind of UFO experience. But it was about 6-8 months ago. We have a 2-story house. My office is down here in the basement, and I have a movie room. So I kind of usually end my days in the movie room watching something after, my son's in bed and my wife's off doing her own thing. And I always turn off a light by the window. And I've looked out that window. We've been here almost 20 years. So every night for almost 20 years, I know what it looks like. And I know what the stars look like when they're out. And I'm looking out, and in the sky, there's like what looks like a row of 4-5 stars. And then above that row is a row of 4. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, the Christmas tree.
Like a Christmas tree. And but or like a triangle that's like not laying down, but up like this. And I'm like, I've never seen that before. So I ran upstairs and I went outside and that wasn't there.
Oh.
And I just sort of stood outside at like, 11:30 at night, kind of just wondering what I just saw. And all I can say is that's the closest thing I could say to a UFO or a series of UFOs in the sky.
And the reason I see the Christmas tree is I've heard of sightings like that. They call it the Christmas tree sight, or whatever.
Yeah, it fit in with those stories. Or like when you heard of like the Phoenix lights, except they, instead of being upright, the Phoenix lights were like flying like this.
Yeah.
But you hear of triangles and things like that in the sky. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And I've never seen it again.
Oh.
Like I think if I
look up a lot more
phenomenon, I'd see it again, right? But I haven't.
No, that's really interesting. That's definitely not Starlink.
No, or anything like that.
No. That yeah, Starlink's interesting enough to see, and it'll freak out people, and I can understand why. But yeah, we see it up here. We have a lot of dark sky here, so. Yes, you do too, I'm sure.
We do, yeah, we do. Depending where you are, like especially if you get out of the city and into the woods somewhere, you just see forever. Like we go to a lake near here called Hewlett Lake quite a bit. My wife and I and our son, and you just go down on the dock at night and look up, and if it's a clear night, you just can see everything.
And when the water's still, you see all of it reflected in the water.
Yeah, I love it. It's probably one of my favorite, most peaceful moments is moments like that.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, and we'd love to hear when you have a new project on. Have you back again, and
absolutely
maybe when you get your book out. And please feel free to put the links up and share it with us, the links when it comes out, so we can.
100%, I will. Yeah, thank you so much.
We love it. Yeah. So
thanks for the opportunity to come on and talk about it. It's funny. This is the first time I've worked on a project where there's been tons of interest before it's even come out. Like the Wendigo is just. I think it's just one of those things that strikes a chord in culture right now.
It's a chord and it's fear too, because it's such a tale. It's such a tale and such a mystery, right? It's what is it? And that's hopefully I never find out personally.
Well, and that's just it. I think it's one of those few. It's the only one I've encountered where you're guaranteed risk. That there's a safety issue in terms, like when we went out and did our investigation, like it was one of those few times that it was like we were actually a bit nervous about it. Because what if you actually find it?
Yeah.
There's a good chance you're gonna get eaten.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So
or become one, and that doesn't sound
one
like
and never go home again. Like it's
and just wander and wander. Yeah, it's a scary subject. So I'm going to smudge my room after this too.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah, some light in. So thank you. Stay with us while we end this. And hey, guys, thank you for joining us. I'm glad we're going to be airing this in July, so we're pre-recording this right now because Jason's getting busier and busier and busier, and join us next Sunday for whatever's going to be on, and take care, everyone, and we'll see you later.
Thank you.
Now, if I can end this today.